welcome back to One on One with Mr. U. Of course, I am your host, Mr. U. Here to join us today is author of the book Restored by the Storm, Navigating Through Life's Unexpected Challenges, speaker and president of Derrick Companies. My guy, Bill Derrick, is in the house with us today. How are you, sir? Good to see you.
I am great. It's a great day as usual.
Absolutely. We got yellow snow out here, so it's not great in some respects, but it's great every other way, man. But good
Yep.
to have you in here. If you guys are watching and listening for the very first time, firstly, thanks for making us part of your week. Of course, we are live on YouTube and Facebook as we speak. All the platforms, including our listening platforms, will have this episode up within the next 90 minutes or so after we close today. But thanks again for watching and listening to One on One with Mr. U. And of course, if you'd like to follow some of our previous shows, the link is in the show notes. You can grab that or grab it from any of our social media platforms and catch what we do here on One on One. So, Bill, good to have you here, man. I'm going to jump in real quick and kind of get a quick assessment of who you are, man, where you come from, and how you believe you got to the place from being a child to the success that you are right now. What's the key factor that happened in your mind?
Yeah. I've always I'm the oldest of 5 children. So
Okay.
I always
High
feel
kids.
yeah, kind of we grew up on most of my life grew up on a farm outside of in western Wisconsin, a small town in western Wisconsin. And as the oldest, I always felt like that made me the most independent. And I think I've bore that out through my life is conformity is not necessarily what I'm looking for in life. But I went to school at University of Minnesota to become a civil engineer. And shortly thereafter, I got a master's degree in business from there. And, I wanted to lead a large company, and was my goal. And I worked for a couple of construction companies for 10, 11 years. And then my father asked me if I'd come and join the family business, which was a construction company in western Wisconsin. And believe it or not, that was kind of a tough decision. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be part of the family business.
Why was that?
I was doing okay on my own. And I didn't want my success necessarily connected to being part of the family. That sounds really selfish, but that's just the way I thought.
Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe you could flesh it out a little bit more. I don't think it's as bad as it sounds. I guess you got to understand who the family is. For one thing, what did you see in the family? What did you notice that made you say, you know what? I want to be independent, because you said that from the outset, you're an independent person. Which is something about the family, something about the environment that said, you know what? I need to kind of make my own mark and not kind of be a carbon copy of what I saw. Was it something like that?
Yeah, and I think that was in the discussions we had. The firm basically was my father as the founder, but he was looking to retire at an earlier age, and so he was looking at succession planning, and in his mind, the succession planning was his sons, and which is fine. And so it was myself and 2 younger brothers, and then another gentleman that we knew very, very well, that was working with my father at the time. And in the end, I said, "Look, our family business has made a mark on primarily being a residential contractor.
Okay.
I am not a residential contractor. I've worked on high-rise office buildings, hotels. I've built distribution centers, medical facilities, things like that. And that's what I want the opportunity to do." And so quite frankly, that was probably part of my fear. Will I be able to pivot the company, so to speak, to at least head in that direction, at least for me? And that's that's kind of where I was coming from. And the agreement was, yes, we want you to do that. But of course, the first day I came to work there, and I came to work, probably my attitude was I was better off being a owner of my own company than to work for someone else for the rest of my life. And that gets back to that independence. I
Yeah,
wanted
that makes
independence.
sense.
So, but anyway, my first day at work, my dad puts a house plan in front of me and my desk, my new desk there. And I said, "What's this?" And he says, "A house plan." And I said, "Well, I see that." And I said, "What do you want me to do?" And he said, "Figure it." And that's what he used to always say for putting an estimate together, was
Okay.
just figure it. And so I reminded him why I was there. And he said, "Yeah, I know." He said, "Do you have any commercial work going on right now?" It's my first day, mister. And he goes, "Do you have any commercial work going on right now?" And I said, "Well, no." And he said, "Well, then you got time to do this." So right out of the get-go, the firstborn son and his father were already testing each other's limits. So,
Oh
but
yeah.
but you know what? In the end of the day, there was struggles, there's ups and downs. I learned that a family business was different than a regular business as time went on. There were times where I was upset with my partners, who my family, they were upset with me over things. But at the end of the day, we all, if we got together on the weekend as family or whatever, we always got along. And
Yeah.
and so that's kind of where, you know, where I kind of came from. And later on we got into a lot of land development, which was important to our company, but it also led to a situation where we almost had a bad downfall because of that too. So
I got a couple of questions that just kind of spark from what you just shared, Bill. And thank you for sharing that, by the way, too. I know that wasn't an easy thing to walk through at the time, but I got a
yeah.
couple of questions. I'll ask you the first one first. When you talked about your independence, what do you think was the factor that kind of sparked it? Because I really believe that there was something that was the reason why you say, you know what? I mean, because so many people, especially in our country, the mindset, and it's a pretty large mindset, do what's stable, do what's best long term, make solid long term investments, get a good job, you know what I'm saying, have benefits, that kind of thing. It seems like you went into entrepreneurship quite quickly. I know you had it exhibited around you and your family, but you jumped into it really quickly. Can you detect for us what you think was spark kind of caused that independent mindset from you that made you not go into the normal watering holes?
um Whether it was books I read, or at the time cassette tapes I listened to,
Oh yeah, we
or
going back
yeah, my
now.
wife and I educated ourselves a lot with those leadership tapes, sales tapes, the
Okay,
old Tom
good.
Hopkins tapes, and and all that. But I think very quickly, it was a benefit that I and my wife also too, we learned that if we want what 98% of everybody else has, just do what everybody else does.
Mhm.
And we didn't want that. And at the time, our motivation was probably more money driven than anything else. Um, as we grow up and mature and age, so to speak, we learn there's more important things in life. But we wanted financial independence,
Okay.
and I think that drove a lot of it, Mista. I really do, and I don't say that, I'm not ashamed of saying that. But I remember I remember telling my dad once, and I'm not sure if I was working for him or not at the time, but I said something about that Jeannie and I had a goal of being financially independent by the time we were 50 years old. And my dad, I'm
Mm.
not sure how he put it, he says, "Well, that just doesn't happen anymore." And,
Oh, really? Okay.
my dad, the motivator. But but,
Mm.
um, I've come to peace with a lot of things about that, and really, if anything, my dad helped me there by motivating me, saying, okay, just watch me. And I've had that attitude several times in life. If you want to motivate me to do something, tell me I can't get it
Tell me
done.
you can't do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I've always had that internal engine, and I think it had a lot to do with the fact that my wife of 45 years, her and I have been a good match, and we just kind of we know what we want and we go for it.
Congratulations, by the way. I want to ask you about that. I'll come back to that question in a bit. I want to ask you about the family business. I want you to kind of theoretically remove yourself from the equation. Just so you can answer this question for me. I know that we talk about family business. It's families, so there's some personal lines that get drawn there. Overall, Bill Derrick being out of the Derrick family business, just for a moment. How do you feel about people going into the family business? Do you see it overall as a good idea? Do you see it as something that you need to weigh certain things? And what things would you be weighing? How do you feel about that overall?
I have very strong feelings about that, mister. I'm glad you asked. I've talked to other business people who have family business, entrepreneurs, and all that. It's a
Mhm.
great discussion. Quite frankly, uh, I don't think the kids should go right into the family business, period. I think they should get out on their own for 3 to 5 years, um, go work somewhere else, even if it's a different industry than what your
Okay.
family business is in. You need to learn what business is all about. You need to observe. You need to learn what it's like to be an employee, to have to take orders sometimes from a boss that sometimes you don't really appreciate, all those things. And I think that is very important. Now, I say that in that of my partners, I'm the only one that had outside work experience. I had worked for 11 years for 3 other companies, and I had that outside experience, and I brought a wealth of experience, not to mention my business education and that, to the company. And
Okay.
I saw that as a lot of value. I'm not sure if my brothers, partners, if they totally appreciated that, but that's where I was coming from. Um, in our firm, most of what is now the 3rd generation, most of the 3rd generation did not necessarily get that outside work experience, which is kind of a heartburn to me sometimes, but that's the way it is. And sometimes, even though you believe that's the right thing to do, when you're in a family business, you got to also pick your battles. And so now I just had a son come to our business. I don't know what it is now, 3.5, 4 years ago. Uh, Mechanical engineer. He's our oldest son, oldest child. Mechanical engineer. He too got a MBA from the University of Minnesota. Um,
Another golden gopher. Okay.
Another golden gopher. He also went to Iowa State, so he's
All
cheering
right.
for the Cyclones too. So,
Wow. Okay.
yeah. So he, he waited. He was in manufacturing. He was a director of ops for a manufacturing firm that was local to our area. And one day he approached me and said, "Dad, I'd like to come to work for your business. I'd like to come to work for you."
Hmm.
And my response immediately was, "No, you don't." And we were probably golfing 9 holes or whatever after work, and I said, "I want you to think about what you're asking, Michael, because family businesses are different. It will be different than where you're at right now." And this went on for a while, and finally he said, "I'm serious." And so we sat down, my brother Ron and I, who now run the business, excuse me, he and I sat down with him and had lunch and talked about it,
He
and I
decided to hang
said,
around, huh?
"Yeah," I said, "You will go to you can come to work here, but you're gonna work for my brother Ron. You're not gonna have me as your boss because I think it's important to that way.
Got it.
So,
That
but
makes
yes,
sense.
long answer, but yes, I think that you shouldn't just go from school um, to a family business. I think getting outside work experience is very valuable.
I love it. I love it. And we'll come back to my
And I,
Jeannie
and I,
question.
you know what? I did that, and I said I was the only one. So I had a consultant one time, you know, part consultant and part psychiatrist, maybe at the time. But he said, "Bill, let me help you out here." And he went to the whiteboard and drew 3 squares. There's 4 of us partners. Drew 3 squares on the board and then a circle. And he said, "Which one are you?" And I said, "I'm the circle." And he said, "Right." And he used that as an example, which helped me a lot. He said, "So why are you trying to make your other partners a circle? Deal with the fact that you're a circle, they're squares, and you need to deal with that and work with that because you aren't going to change them, and it's obvious they aren't going to change you." And that was a good
And
lesson.
by circle, you mean you were more well-rounded in other
No,
areas?
no, there was nothing
Is that
to
what it
that.
is?
It was just he could
Okay.
have drawn a triangle and a hexagon,
Okay.
uh,
Okay.
but it was different. I'm different in the
Fair
way I
enough.
think, the way I do things, just the way
Well,
I work.
good. That's
Yeah.
that's fair. I'm coming back to the Jeannie question now. So
Okay.
first off, congratulations. You've been married to Jeannie for over 45 years, which is quite an accomplishment. So congratulations to you guys. That's wonderful. You got 4 children and 7 grandchildren last time I heard. Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yep. We're we're
Yep.
we're stuck on 7 for the time being.
You got Yeah, you got me beat by 1 in that respect.
Well,
You just
then
found out
try to catch up.
you got 3. Well, that's not my assignment. But we got
I know.
we have to have 3 great grandchildren now that we are learning about. So this is like, oh wow. So this is a lot. But I want to ask you a quick question. This is just for our viewers and listeners who, and on our show we get into a lot of different topics. I guess this is the relationship portion of the show, I guess. Talk to me about how you feel like you and Gina were able to accomplish that and make that work. Some people will never say it, but some people settle and can get that far. But I don't feel like I don't get the sense from how you talk about her that that's what you did. What do you think was one key, if you have one, that made you guys have the kind of longevity you guys have over 45 years of an incredible accomplishment? What do you think that key is?
Her. It would be Jeannie, I think.
What?
Um,
Really the key? Okay.
we're both. I said that in case she watches this. So no, I'm just
Copy
kidding.
that.
Um,
Okay.
uh, we're both what I would say type A personalities,
Okay. I knew that.
which is very tough. She was very successful in business. She was in computer sales back when a computer filled a whole room type of
Oh
thing.
yeah.
And she
Just
worked for some
Xerox
big
machine.
companies. Yep. And she was very successful. And she, at about the time our third was going to be born, she left her job. And after the birth and all that, she decided to stay home and be a full-time mom.
Mm.
And she had a little business on the side that she did very well with, a little home business that she was very good at. But for the most part, she took responsibility to make sure our children were raised uh, with a full-time mom, which was really important. She gave up quite a career to do that. Now, I talk about it in my book. There was a time during the Great Recession when things were dire. I'm
Yeah.
putting in all sorts of hours. I mean, it's, you do what you have to do, And she
Absolutely.
grabbed me at the house one day. The kids were in the other room, and she grabbed me and she said, "Bill, uh, we need more time with you. You're spending
Mm.
too much time at the office. You're spending too much, all that." Um, And I basically said, Jeannie, I'm doing this for you and the kids. I'm trying to make sure we're successful enough so we can have the life we want and things like that. And she looked at me and she said, evidently, we have a misunderstanding. I didn't marry you for your money. And that was a pretty powerful moment, mister. And I don't know if Jeannie understood that at the time. I don't know if I understood that at the time, but it did have an impact on me. In fact, I wrote about it in my book. And
Wow, that is powerful.
sometimes we have to, I think that we're a couple that tries as best we can to understand what each other wants in life, whether it's on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly, whatever. We try to understand what each other want. We have individual needs, but we try to live life as a unit. And many times, I'll tell her that she'll be off doing her own thing someday and I'll be off doing mine. And there's kind of this feeling of, worrying about each other, hoping that, we're not together. So we enjoy being together.
That's really good.
And, so I think that's part of the success. I mean, we could be like a lot of others, live separate lives and meet up at night, but we don't do that. So
yeah, that's wonderful, man. Congratulations again, man. It's an incredible story, man.
Thank you, Mister.
Before we end the show, I have to go into this area. I think it's one of the most astounding parts of your story. So there are 3 things that I want us to talk about. That's how we're going to end the show for today. I'm going to have you take a few minutes at the end and just speak to the people, whatever's on your heart, whatever you want to share. But the 3 areas I want to talk about when I get into how you led your business through the recession, which I think is powerful. A lot of people can't really say that. They say they ended their company during the recession. Not many have led it through it and came out on the other end of it. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about one of the big storms that probably was the biggest storm of your life that you encountered during that time. And I think we know what we're talking about here. I hope I'm not losing you. It's your story. And the last thing, I want you to kind of get into the book, why you wrote it and who you were writing it for. So I'll lead you on all 3, but as far as the first thing, kind of just speak to me about, what happened when you entered into a recession as a business owner, and how did you come through it? You can share that briefly for us.
Real quickly, it was certainly very much unexpected. We had a successful business. It seemed like in Western Wisconsin, where we were at, the recessions never touched us. So we kind of went into it with maybe a little overconfidence about our business.
Okay.
We probably went into it thinking that we couldn't be touched. Now I say we, I've got 3 other partners at the time, plus my dad's still around. He's still part owner. And so when I say we, I'm probably talking more about how I felt. I can't speak for my partners. But, the way I look at it, they can write their own book if they want to talk about what they did, But went into this and it's like, okay, this is only going to be a 10% downturn for 6 months. That's what the experts said. Well, the experts were wrong. I mean, real estate just fell off the cliff. And so we weren't selling houses. We were doing enough commercial industrial work to make a few bucks, but not enough to make up for our losses in other places. And we had all this land that we were going to develop in the future. And so, but a lot of that land, at least part of it, was financed by banks. And at the time it was financed most of it was interest only loans. So we just pay the interest on a monthly or quarterly basis. And when we start to sell it, then we can start paying back the principal.
Yeah.
Well, that works provided that the value of the land doesn't go down. Well, most of that land went down 75% in value. We weren't making enough
Big
money
time.
to make the interest payments. Things were bad. So, um, I think the best way to put it is that we didn't know what we didn't know, and we had to start negotiating with the banks. That was the thing to do back then, and but we had a basis with our lenders of integrity, so they knew when we said we want to work something out, we want to pay you back. They knew that we were serious. And I think in the end, we just had to convince them that we were going to be worth more to them alive than dead and,
Mm.
help keep us alive. Um, we met as a group. I met separately. It was kind of my responsibility to kind of lead us through that situation with the financing while the rest of my partners tried to keep the operations running and making as much money as we could, if at all possible. Um, and it was kind of like during that time, I'm going to throw this in. I realized during that time why I had come to the family business. And,
Okay. We'll hear this.
in the book of Esther, in the Old Testament, Esther's queen of Persia or whatever at the time, and her uncle says to her that you have to help save our people, the Jewish nation.
Yeah.
And she was afraid to. And he said, "Did you ever think that maybe you were where you're at for such a time as this?" And I really felt that at the time. And so I don't take sole credit for us getting through. I mean, we were a team. We worked hard. I did what I could, and we did it with a no quit attitude, and that was really important every day. And I learned that lesson during that time. And this was
Absolutely.
5 years missed of doing this. So yeah, I can get in more detail, but does that kind of give you an idea of
No,
where?
absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk about that huge storm that you walked through, man. There's many people who have walked through storms like that, but again, like, similar to the business, but in a more personal way because it's health related. They don't
Well,
always come out on the other side of it. It changes them forever, and sometimes they don't make it.
yeah.
Talk to us about that storm and how you got through this.
So after after 5 long years, I'll say about 2012, we finally realized that our business, that the light at the end of the tunnel was actually the end of the tunnel and not another train coming. We realized that we had to start to switch our attitude from survival mode to thriving mode again, and that was tough. Um, but things are looking up, and all of a sudden, I start feeling all sorts of aches and pains in my body. Uh,
Mm.
things just weren't right, and uh, so I started having all sorts of tests commencing in fall of 2012, and it was just all sorts of things, and and then this went on and kind of dropped it for a while, and then in the fall of 2013, I had another ailment, a GI tract ailment, and I went to the gastroenterologist, and he said, "I think I know what it is. It's not a problem. We can get it taken care of, um, but I need to do additional blood tests." And the next day, he called me up and he said, "You're going to need to see a hematologist. Your protein levels in your blood are way high." So I went to hematologist, did a bunch of other tests, and basically the week of Thanksgiving in 2013, I was diagnosed with a non-curable blood cancer called multiple myeloma. Average life expectancy at that time was 7 years from diagnosis. It's killed many people. Didn't matter how rich you are or how powerful you are. Sam Walton, that's what he died of, was multiple myeloma in 1997. Back then, they didn't have the treatments they have now. But now I'm facing death in the face at this point. And we switched, thanks to my wife, we switched to going to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota in 2014. They found a tumor in my disc between my shoulder blades. It had eaten away my T4 disc. I was 2 inches shorter than I used to be because of it. Um, I was kind of a mess at the time. And went into chemo in late 2015. My body did not react well to it. The cancer, it took care of the cancer pretty well, but it was toxic to my body. And in the summer of 2016, I had a stem cell transplant, which is basically where they put a chemo into you, and it kills every cell in your blood system. And then a couple days later, they put your stem cells back into your blood system where they can regrow into the cells they need to be, that type of thing. It's a medical miracle is really what it is. And so I'm a survivor. I'm a walking, talking miracle. And I learned during this time, I realized tomorrow, I get blood tests and go to Mayo Clinic every 3 months. And I realized the only sure thing about multiple myeloma is that eventually it does come back, even if you're in remission. But right now I've surpassed the life expectancy. I've surpassed what they call the duration of a stem cell transplant. I've surpassed that. I've learned through this, and this is a great point, is I've learned through this that I'm not in control like I thought I was before the Great Recession.
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of how my book starts out, about how I was in control and I had life just where I want. It goes back to that independence thing again. And I learned during this time, whether it was on the radiation table or suffering through that stem cell transplant, or even during the Great Recession, that kind of started changing my attitude. I learned that I probably can control two things that I need to concentrate on. And that's my attitude and my effort. And quite frankly, the rest of the things that I can control are gifts from God, and I best do the best I can. I'm a person who understands very well, at least I believe I do, that God has kept me alive for a reason. And at 71 years old, I best keep the journey going and figure out what it is he wants me to do. And that's my life right now.
Thank you, bro. Thank you for sharing that, man.
You're welcome.
This is Bill Derrick. He's the president of Derrick Companies, speaker, and the author of Restored by the Storm, Navigating Through Life's Unexpected Challenges. You can hear a lot more of his story on his battle against cancer in the book. I'm sure his marriage, all the areas where he's grown as a person and seen a lot of life. It's great for us folks who haven't gotten that far down the road yet. It's great to hear stories like this. It's definitely a blessing to hear how he's a walking, talking miracle. That book is going to be something you definitely want to check out. So it's called Restored by the Storm, Navigating Through Life's Unexpected Challenges. That's Bill Derrick. Bill, if you don't mind, before we walk out of here, can you please just let everybody know where they can find your work and just offer maybe perhaps a word of wisdom or encouragement for our viewers and listeners, and then we'll close out. Go ahead.
Well, they can go to my website, which is billderrick.com, and that is all the information on me. It has additional information. You can book me as a speaker for your organization's events. You can find out more about the book, obviously. And I would just say that it's important that people understand that when you get into these storms, they will end. They're not a permanent deal. It's a transitional time. And you have to decide whether it's going to be for the better or for the worse. And that's the idea of these storms. And they will change you. And you will have to decide whether it's the new normal is going to be better than the old normal. And it's not easy for everybody. Some of us can say, well, of course it's going to be better. Well, some people don't look at it that way, and they need to change. That's why I wrote the book, was to inspire others that you too can get through this. And most importantly, you can learn more from the hard times than the successful times. And you need to look at it that way and look for the blessings. And that's how I would end this.
I love it. Excellent stuff, sir. All the information you need to be in the show notes. If you're watching and listening for the first time, thanks for making us part of your week. That's Bill Derrick. I'm Mr. U. Thanks for watching One-on-One. Have a fantastic day.